Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the channel. This is Big Red Overland. I'm Brian with Big Red Overland. Today we're in the house because it's like 10 degrees outside, so I didn't want to freeze my butt off. But I did want to get this video out there. It's something I've been thinking about for a while. Um, we're going to talk about medical gear today. I see a lot of people on Instagram and TikTok and things like that. They carry first aid kits with them, which is awesome. But a lot of them seem to be missing some gear. If you have some of this stuff, that's awesome. But I just want to spread awareness on some other things that you maybe didn't think about that you should also have with you. So we're going to go over all this medical gear, and if you stay till the end, I have a bonus item that we're going to talk about, and it's not medical related, but it is something for emergencies that you definitely need to have with you, especially out there on trails when you're far away from any kind of help. So speaking of that, a lot of times, I mean, I live in Pennsylvania, up in the Pocono area, and even when I go out camping, I'm probably about 40 minutes away for any kind of ambulance or fire trucks or anything like that that's going to come out there. And if something really bad happens, I need to be able to sustain myself until first responders can get out there. And anybody you're with, you should be able to help them as well. Accidents can happen, major accidents can happen. If your chainsaw slips or your axe slips or you're cutting something open with your pocket knife and it cuts an artery or something like that, you could be in some serious trouble, and you need to be able to help yourself because people might not be able to get to you to help you fast enough. So we're going to go over this gear and some things that I think are extremely important to have with you. So we'll start with what I see a lot of people already have, and that's these little boo-boo kits. I call them boo-boo kits. You can pick these up at Walmart, Amazon, things like that. They're like kind of just pre-packaged first aid kits. But the thing with these are, it's not survival gear. And I think that it's nice to have band-aids and creams and ointments and things like that with you, just for comfort, really. I mean, if you nick your finger or get stung by a bee, you're gonna be okay even without a band-aid. This is just stuff that's kind of more just for convenience, in my opinion, for comfort, really. We'll open this up. So these kind of kits are really the only thing of this kind of stuff that I would buy as like a complete kit, or at least not worry too much about like supplementing. And in here, I just have, some rubber gloves. I haven't gone through these in a long time. So we got sting relief, rubber gloves, just some pads, some band-aids, obviously. I have some ibuprofen, some aspirin, all kinds of creams and ointments, things like that, antiseptic wipes, got tweezers, some tape. It's really just, like I said, a boo-boo kit. So when you get little nicks, cuts, scrapes, bee stings, whatever it is, this will just make you feel a little better on the spot. But like I said, guys, this stuff, I mean, it's nice to have, but this isn't life-saving gear. And really anything that this is going to stop or anything that this is going to help, little minor cuts and scrapes and stuff, you'd be fine even without this. You can wrap a small cut in paper towel or whatever it is, or just get over the bee sting. But these are just little cheap complete kits that I know everybody knows about and probably everybody has. So let's get into the kind of more serious gear here. So this is like a trauma kit. It is a trauma kit that I keep in my truck, just strapped to the behind my passenger side seat, right onto the headrest there. And I also keep with it a tourniquet. We'll talk about those later, but this is a trauma kit. So this is going to be for more major injuries, those injuries that you need to be able to help yourself with right now, or you're in trouble. I have some shears here for cutting off clothes if you need to look for a wound on somebody, things like that. We'll open this up again. Like I said, I haven't gone through these in a while, so I don't really remember what's in there. So it's a good idea to also do what I'm doing. Check your stuff. Remember what's in there, where it all is, and what you're going to need. And my kits, they're not all encompassing. There's always stuff you can add. You might live in the West where there's rattlesnakes and you might want a snake bite kit. I don't carry stuff like that with me. And there's probably some things I didn't think about here. So make sure you leave a comment in there if you think I'm doing something wrong or you think I should add something or whatever the case is. So this kit, I think, is actually, it's whatever. I know I'm going to contradict myself with buying the pre-packaged kits. This is from Rhino Rescue with the tourniquet. And we're going to talk about tourniquets and brands of tourniquets later. But I did buy a kit and then just kind of supplemented it, added some more stuff in. So Rhino Rescue, I think it was on Amazon. It's relatively cheap, but don't skimp on this stuff. Just get what is going to work, because the day you need this, you're going to really actually need it. So in here we got emergency bandage, wound dressing. I think this probably has some blood clotting agents on it. What is this? This is a combat cravat. So this is, I guess, to make up like a sling. If you need to immobilize one of your limbs to prevent further injury, that's an important thing that you got to do. And then chest seals, which the likelihood of needing a chest seal while you're out in the woods camping, I don't know, but it's still something that's good to have. Maybe a hunter accidentally shoots you or something like that. But this is going to be for thoracic punctures, because your lungs can't bring in air if you have another hole in your body. So you have to seal those holes with what would be a chest seal on one side and chest seal on the other. So that way when your thoracic cavity expands, you can get oxygen in. So chest seals, a lot of these, an actual trauma kit will probably come with those. Got a space blanket. I don't know if you're going to be hypothermic or something like that. I mean, that could help. This is to protect an eye injury. You would take this, put this over your eye, wrap it around, so that way, I guess if you had something stuck in your eye, you can kind of try to immobilize it a little bit. So good to have. Really, the kind of the main things you're going to need is, here's something that, this is an important thing right here, some compressed gauze. So any kind of injury that you're going to get, that's not necessarily like in an artery where you would use a tourniquet, or on a limb where you would use a tourniquet, this is gauze. So this is for wound packing. So you just would stuff this into any kind of wound to try to stop the bleeding from coming out, and then wrap it up with a bandage or whatever the case is. Ideally, what you're trying to do with any of this stuff is to plug holes, stop bleeding, stop the leaking. What else do we have here? Just gloves. Again, this was a kit. You know, I probably wouldn't buy the eye thing or the blanket. If the kit comes with it, great. It's just more stuff. One thing to avoid that a lot of kits come with is, I forget what they're called, a compression needle. So it's a big thick needle that you're supposed to shove into people's chests to let out, I guess, if there's pressure building in there from an internal injury. It's a really advanced medical treatment that I wouldn't recommend anybody ever trying. So avoid that. If your kid has it, maybe keep it in there, but don't be messing around with that. This is a nasal airway, nasal pharyngeal airway. If you had injuries to your mouth or something and you can't breathe, this goes down through your nose so that you can still get air in. This is very important. To be able to make an airway is extremely important. And then, just like I said, gauzes, wraps, compressed gauze is a good one. And this is just a little kit just to have a little bit of extra stuff to stop major bleeding and major injuries. So this is the one that I keep behind my driver's seat there, or excuse me, the passenger seat. This one I keep on my hiking bag. This one I think has a little bit of just kind of both stuff in there, just so I can be a little more self-contained with everything. It's also a bigger bag. So in here I have Band-Aids, pills, antidiarrheal, aspirin, Advil, creams, ointments, all the boo-boo kit type stuff in a pouch there. This is, I believe it's called a SAM splint. So it's kind of a semi-rigid roll here that you would use to, if you had an injury, like something you need to splint, a broken arm, things like that, to just help immobilize it. You'd wrap some gauze around that, or just a medical wrapping. Something like an ace bandage. And I have more gauze, some tape. Tape is a good one, medical tape. I think there was medical tape in here. Maybe not. I should add that in there. Wound dressings, some blood clotting agent, and just kind of more wound dressings and things like that. Actually, this wasn't as complete as I remember it was, so I'm gonna have to add some stuff into there. Again, that's why it's a good idea to go through your stuff. So tourniquets. Tourniquets is probably like the #1 thing here. You'll see anybody in any kind of combat setting, police, anybody, first responders, things like that, they always carry tourniquets, because if you get an arterial bleed, you get a deep cut in your arm, something like that, you can bleed out extremely fast. It's a minute or so, you're done. So you need to be able to get one of these on you extremely quickly And so this is something that this should always be like kind of within reach near you. Like I said, this is attached to this bag that I keep right behind the headrest. Tourniquets are something that a lot of people cheap out on, that they really shouldn't be cheaping out on, because to use this, it goes on the, I'm not going to fully demo it here, but it goes on the limb. Maybe I will kind of. To use this, it would go on your limb and you pull it really, really tight, right? And you use this part, which is called the windlass, to crank down onto it to cut off the blood flow to the injury. You want to, this is a bad example. You want this to be as high up on your body as possible, as high up above the injury as possible. And then you crank down on it until the blood flow stops to that area, because you need to stop that bleeding or else you'll bleed out. But anyway, these are things that you don't want to cheap out on, because the windlasses can break, the Velcro can give out, and then you're going to have some serious problems, because then what you brought for something that you're going to need isn't working and you're going to have a bad day. The gold standard is the North American Rescue. They're called CATs. This is the CAT 7, I believe. Yeah, CAT 7. North American Rescue is kind of the gold standard for tourniquets. They're not inexpensive, but if I was going to recommend any of them, the North American Rescue, because they're tested in real world applications all over the world all the time, and they work. I would pick one of these up, or I saw this might have came with this kit, or I ordered it separately. This is the Rhino Rescue brand, and it actually has a metal windlass on there. But I've seen videos of like soldiers over in Ukraine and things like that, and they have these on their kits, so they must be working. It does have this pretty solid metal windlass here, and it seems pretty nicely built. So maybe the only off-brand I'd recommend is this Rhino Rescue. But there's things like the Rats tourniquets. It's kind of like a rope. I've heard those aren't recommended because they can create kind of like a space where the blood will clot up, or it'll kind of bubble in the vein, and that's not a good thing at all. So really all I'd recommend is Rhino or the North American Rescue. I have seen another style that's pretty nice. It's like a ratcheting type where you zip it down and then you can ratchet it tighter. I've never seen those in real world use, but they do seem to get good reviews and a lot of people use them. But again, don't buy junk, because this isn't something that you want to cheap out with. We don't cheap out on really anything else on our rigs. Why cheap out on something that could save your life? So I hope this is all stuff that you might not have thought about, or hope there's some things in here you might not have thought about that maybe you want to add to your medical kit. Maybe all you have is this little boo-boo kit and you never really thought about the major trauma stuff. But like I said, sometimes like a really bad thing can happen out there. You can cut yourself on sharp metal, on glass. We use knives, we use chainsaws, axes, things like that, and accidents can happen to you or a loved one, and you need to be able to help in that occasion, because people might not be able to get to you in time. So with that, it's not enough to just buy this gear. You definitely need to sign up for some kind of training. I know that there's classes called Stop the Bleed, TCCC. Another good thing to go with that is a lot of hospitals, the Red Cross and American Heart Association put on first aid and CPR classes. CPR is a big one. If you're not CPR certified, you should get out there and take a class. If they're not free, they're probably extremely cheap, but they're probably free. And that's another life-saving thing, where not even just out on the trail, any of this stuff, not even just out on the trail, something can happen to somebody while you're in public, and you could be the guy that's there and able to stop the crisis, able to give somebody aid and treat somebody, your friends, your loved ones, strangers, and yourself. So get out there and get training and learn how to use this stuff, even if it's just resources on YouTube, which I'm sure there's plenty of. Okay, so let's get to the bonus item here. Like I said, it's not medical related, but it is emergency related. Fire extinguishers. You should have this in your vehicle, somewhere where you can access it quickly, not only just for vehicle fires, but if you're going camping a lot, obviously you're going to have campfires, fire starters, maybe any kind of propellant around, and accidents can happen. Cooking fires at camp. This is extremely important to have, because you don't want to burn the whole woods down. And again, with the time it could take for first responders to get there, it could become a pretty major issue. And then also the side of vehicle fires. Maybe somebody else has a vehicle fire. Just something you should keep with you. in case of emergencies, just like all this stuff. So that's all I have for now. Thanks for watching, guys. If you learned anything, let me know in the comments. If you have any recommendations for me or things that you might do differently, or suggestions, leave me a comment, let me know. Please like, follow, subscribe, follow me on TikTok, Instagram, things like that. I really appreciate all the support with that. And that's all I got for now. So Big Red Overland out.